Hey guys, in this chapter we're going to be discussing the 2 bishop f4 London. Let's get started. So white plays d4, d5, 2 bishop f4. What's the difference between this and white playing knight f3, knight f6, bishop f4? Well, there's a couple key differences. One of the differences is in the line c5, e3, knight c6, c3, queen b6, queen b3, c4, queen c2, bishop f5, queen takes f5, queen takes b2. Without the inclusion of the moves knight f6 and knight f3, white would be able to play queen takes d5 and queen b5 with excellent compensation for the exchange. So let's look at that. It's the exact same concept. If you play queen b6 here, after queen b3, c4, queen c2, bishop f5, queen takes f5, queen takes b2, queen takes d5, queen takes a1, and queen b5, white is the one getting the initiative, and I would not want to be black. After all, the king's pretty exposed, material's about balanced, and this queen is sort of trapped. So, okay, there's some theory here that suggests that black is doing possibly okay, or at least this position is maybe not absolutely lost for black, but still not comfortable for me. I want to play knight f6 and knight c6 before queen b6 as a general guideline. So that's one possible difference. Another difference is in the line 2 bishop f4. Sometimes white meets c5, which we should meet bishop f4 with c5. It's the same concept. Sometimes he plays e4. And this is just not a good gambit if you gain a tempo on their knight. So, alright, fair enough. Well, what do I recommend here? I recommend knight c6, trying to sharpen things up, deviating from theory. Let's say we take the pawn. What's white's idea? White's idea is hopefully we can't play knight c6. With some space advantage, he may castle queenside, get some initiative. I just wanted to avoid the opponent's preparation. That's why I recommend knight c6. But as shown by the arrows here, this is a sort of a Benoni-like position. Black will fianchetto on the long diagonal, play on the queen side. It's completely playable. It's a bit sharper, easier to make a mistake, but black is better. So be my guest if you want to play 3d takes e4. Accept the gambit, but I'd rather just decline it and sort of suggest rapid developments coming right up. So what should white do? Should white take one of the pawns or maybe play in knight c3? Well, let's look at knight c3. Maybe white's going to ignore the tension in the center. After all, masters are often very flexible, and that's an important principle. So, okay, let's say c takes d4. Well, if they move the knight, we're gonna gain a tempo on that bishop. So let's say e takes d5, and these complications just don't really help white. After all the exchanges, it's just pretty smooth. Black can develop all of his pieces very easily. Bishop's coming out here. White's going to have a damaged pawn structure. You can castle kingside, you can castle queenside. This bishop can come out later. It's okay, you can even play bishop b7 and c5. It's just normal position where black has at least equality. And personally, I prefer black. And my reason for that is the kingside majority is better than white's queenside majority. White cannot create a passed pawn with his doubled c-pawns, but black can one day create a passed pawn with his extra e-pawn. Maybe he'll push the pawns eventually. So white has to watch out in the long term, and black should be able to solve his development issues, especially without queens. So going back, so instead of knight c3, well, what other moves are there? Well, generally speaking, people don't play these sidelines, but we might as well analyze them. Okay, d takes c5. You can play d4. I just like development. Same concept. When they grab that c5 pawn, we're almost always just winning that pawn back. White can't keep it. Smooth development. Excellent position. No problems. Okay, so e takes d5 is also possible, but I'm not too worried about moving my queen out early for one thing, because I'm attacking a pawn. I have to defend it somehow, and taking on c5 is not much help because, well, now my queen's not exposed for one thing. I also have a lead in development. The white king is exposed on d1. I'm targeting that bishop, I'm targeting that pawn, and you cannot really protect it in view of something like, I'm just going to grab your bishop, and then grab your pawn, and then hopefully grab your king. Black should be better. So as usual, taking on c5 is not working, and these are concrete lines, theory, blah, 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 blah. Okay, it's the concepts. We're trying to develop as fast as we can. We want to play the queen b6, bishop f5 lines. We bring both knights out. c5 targets the opponent's center and takes advantage of white not playing c4. The b2 pawn is often a weakness. These concepts anchor everything else, and then white sometimes goes for tactics so that he avoids getting worse. And then we can learn a few tactics or calculate a few tactics, and usually black has more than one good option. Okay, So knight c3, queen takes d4, not forced, but I like it. The gist of it is black has an extra pawn, so what's she gonna do? We'll look at, like, let's say knight d5, e5, knight c7. Okay, well, he's going for that exchange, but we have a pawn for the exchange. That knight's trapped. All of our pieces are coming out very fast. I mean, in practice, white's probably just going to lose in a few moves. And that tends to be what happened in master level so far. Very few people would be willing to play these positions as white. It's just a sort of tactical cheap shot, sort of trying to trick you. And it's like one of those London attack attempts of sorts. It's like there are a few people who aren't going to play the London as a system. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean they're doing good. It just means that they might confuse you sometimes. Hopefully not. Okay, so this e4 is sharp, but it's just not that hard to handle, I guess. You can either take it or go for fast development, and there's a couple cool exchange sacrifices, but you win the pawn that knight in the corner eventually and hopefully get a material advantage. I think it was Cyrus Delectawala recommended this in a London book, I think it was, a few years ago, but I honestly don't remember. I think that, but maybe it was a side recommendation. Anyways, theory moves on. e3, knight c6. You can also play knight f6. It doesn't really matter, but I prefer knight c6 because I'm trying to target that pawn. c3. Okay, fine. We'll pretend that this is theory and grab that pawn back with the dominant center. Okay, knight f3, knight f6, and we're sort of transposing into the other version of the London. Queen b6 is coming. Bishop f5. b2 is weak. Knight c3. Alright, job of a London's getting pretty serious, and maybe I'm going to have to answer some questions in the notes because I just really want to give people the summary and don't want to flood people with theory. Gist of it is, white wants to take that, white wants to come in, right? And sometimes white wants to take this pawn because he can protect it with the knight, and that's annoying, so if we play a6, he's going to probably take it in some position, or play knight f3 first, and okay, I don't know. I just want to keep it simple, right? If the opponent has a tactical idea, I'd like to prevent it. C takes d4, and he can't go for these knight b5 stuff because we hit the bishop with tempo, so he takes it. Now I don't have to worry about him taking. In these symmetrical-ish positions, this knight is kind of misplaced, especially after a6. And we're in a Carlsbad position. Carlsbad positions are sort of this sort of exchange of e-pawn for c-pawn, which happens in like the Queen's Gambit decline, where white exchanges on d5, for example. It can happen in the exchange Caro-Kann. It can happen in a lot of openings, and it's very, very thematic. So what's going on here? Well, conceptually, this knight is misplaced because it just doesn't have good squares, and usually you don't want to block your c-pawn in queen-pawn openings with the knight, maybe for dynamic reasons. What else is going on? Well, black has not blocked his light-squared bishop inside the pawn chain yet, so it should be pretty easy to bring it out pretty soon with bishop f5 or bishop g4, and easily develop the king side. And what else? Well, quite often there's a pawn store on the queen side, and in some positions you can also target the opponent's queen side if he chooses to castle that way. So the concepts are easy enough to understand, really, really thematic, so especially because it's just the same moves as like most of the other Carlsbad positions, and the knight on c3, again, isn't great. I'm not going to say white doesn't have chances to confuse you, but it doesn't seem to be that hard to equalize, and bishop g4, we can grab that knight if needed, mostly to target the dark squares. Queen b6 is an added idea, and of course we can just develop our pieces very fast. It's just very simple to play. I'm highlighting queen b6 or queen a5 as additional ideas beyond standard development with equality. So, job of a London, okay, he might trick you. I'm not going to say that this line isn't dangerous. White often tries to use this sort of thing. Okay, he does it with a different move order usually. Honestly, we can get back to that. Wait, hold on. What is the move order the people who play the job of it usually do? Knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4, c5, e3, takes, a6, knight f3, and then bishop g4. Yeah, and we get the same position. And yes, bishop g4 before knight c6. Wait, didn't I tell you that you should develop your knights before bishops? Well, what's the difference? The difference is white is knight e5, and I don't want to bring my bishop out anymore because he'll keep attacking it in some positions, and I don't know. It's playable, I guess. It's just kind of boring. You get a bunch of exchanges and your bishop is not great. So I'd rather just get it out now, and then I'll bring my knight out. It's a pretty simple position to play. Okay, so going back into 2 bishop f4. I can't wait till the model game section, then I can focus less on theory. Okay, so knight f6. Well, is there any other fake sidelines white has? Let's see. Yeah, I don't think so. Knight f6. Well, what's white's options here? because what if he plays this as an opening and not as a system, right? Knight f3 transposes after queen b6. Okay, black is better. Bishop d3. Well, I don't know. That doesn't really do anything. You can just develop your pieces. You can play queen b6. Black is more than fine. I mean, it's probably just a transposition mostly, right? Knight d2 is an exception. The idea behind knight d2 is if black plays the move he usually wants to play after developing both knights, with queen b6, he just doesn't have the advantage anymore, because after queen b3, c4, white is not forced to go for that endgame, and you cannot play this bishop f5 move, which you very much want to play, in view of queen takes f5 and queen takes b2, because the rook is not trapped. He can move it, or bring the queen back to b1. And that's the point of knight d2. The point of knight d2 is to prepare for queen b6 so that white can meet queen b3, c4, queen c2, preventing bishop f5, and then, as we've already mentioned, if you don't have bishop f5, the c4 pawn is a weakness because white has the e4 break and the b3 break, and if black can prevent these breaks, essentially, then it's a free space advantage in the long run. So what should black do instead? I think bishop f5 is a great move. The idea is it prepares queen b6. Why does this prepare queen b6? Well, it's very simple. If you play c4, they can't play queen c2 anymore. So it's also a pretty symmetrical development, but black has a better queenside knight, and I guess that c5 pawn is technically hanging in a lot of positions, but basically it's not. You always can play e5 or e6, take it back, have a better center, so I think white's the one who needs to be careful in these positions. Alright, let's take a look at white's options. Knight gf3 on move 6, queen b6 is a transposition, black is doing quite well. We've looked at this in a different move order. And these endgames are, as usual, just very good for black. Okay, so queen b3, queen c8. Wait, what? Queen c8? What's going on? Okay. So white's attacking this b7 pawn, and I'm defending it. Queen d7 also exists, but then he'll hit my queen, and I don't like to give my opponent any ideas. If people play just general moves in the London, I get to play c4 and pawn storm their queenside, and then hopefully get it past c4 pawn, or something similar and crush them, right? So, I mean, obviously white can try to play for some sort of dynamics in the meantime, but why give him any ideas? Just, like, hope that he falls asleep at the board. Queen c8. Now he can't hit my, my queen, and my idea is now that the pawn is protected, I would like to play c4. But also, queen b6, the typical move that we very much like to play, preparing c4 just isn't as great here because dc5, and if you take the pawn, he takes on b7, that's not what I want. After all, rook b8 is not working because of the bishop, and bishop b5 is coming. So, for that reason, okay, well, it's still playable, I guess. You can go for some endgame, but I don't like these endgames. White gets to undouble his pawns or protect c5, and it's fine, but not my cup of tea. I'd rather try to crush them. Queen c8. And what should white do? I know I keep saying this, but white needs to play concretely because if he doesn't, he's in trouble. But let's pretend that there's a concrete approach. dc5, some people play, and okay, there's just many ways black can play. He can win the pawn back. I'm just going to leave it at that. If you guys want to debate details in the notes, you're welcome, but there's just too many ways black can get a good position. And it's already a good position. I don't see what the problem is. Okay, so there's knight gf3 is possible, c4, and you can just sort of end here. I just like these positions. It's a free space advantage, and black pawn storms. Could white play concretely? Well, he's certainly the one who has to prove it, and I've had many victories from these positions as a result. So going back, in conclusion, 2 bishop f4, c5, for the most part, is not different from with the knights developed. It gives white a couple extra options, and if white doesn't go for these options, we're just going to develop both of the knights and play queen b6 with bishop f5 and usual closed positions with either some initiative, a central pawn majority, or a free space advantage. Whereas if white does try the options, after e4, knight c6 offers good confusing chances, fast development, white's pawns are under pressure. You can also take on e4, and the other alternative line for white is 3 e3, knight c6, c3, knight f6, and then the key move for white, knight g2. But as long as you play bishop f5, by the way, a general idea, when white plays knight g2, we play bishop f5 if our queen isn't on b6. That's true here, and that is also true after knight f3, knight f6, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight c6. We also play bishop f5 with the same concept. White's knight d2 is prophylaxis against queen b6, so bishop f5 is preparing queen b6. Again, with an excellent position. Hopefully you will use these ideas in your own games and crush many opponents in the London. Feel free to share notable games in the comments, and I'll see you in the next section.